Hey there, have you ever wondered what's better to do for your business? Spending time on branding the business and building the brand for business development, or spending your time generating leads, chasing those leads, and trying to close those leads? Or branding, being a cultivator, or lead generation, hunter, gatherer? Stay tuned. I'm going to give you what I think is the best thing to do. Hi there, it's James Becker. Welcome to another episode of Going For It with James B. Today, we're going to talk about our fundamental number 9, which is we believe here at Fusion that concentrating on building a brand in your specific marketplace or niche is critical to business longevity, and why conversely, generating leads has a diminishing return on investment, meaning the more that you invest in generating leads, the less return you get. I just mentioned this idea of comparing cultivating versus hunting and gathering. In the history of the world, the societies and the cultures that were cultivators progressed at a much more rapid pace than those societies or cultures that were primarily hunter or gatherers. I think it's the same thing for businesses. Cultivating, in my mind, means building a brand. And building a brand means building a business that can last and is also independent of vendors and advertising outlets. And this is critical, and it's a critical step to business longevity, because your business should not be dependent on outside vendors whom you have no control over, such as Google or website leads or Facebook. If you're concentrated in those areas and they change things, you could be in real trouble. Building a business based upon lead generation without simultaneously building a brand means being dependent on those specific lead sources and their effectiveness. This is really important because lead sources through advertising is reliant on the platform, and those platforms change service options, they change pricing, and their effectiveness and the return on investment is always changing over time. I've experienced this in my career, and I've seen it time and time again with platforms like TV advertising, social media returns. Craigslist used to be huge 20 years ago. It's nothing now. Zillow has had different responses and have changed their pricing and their program several times as they try to figure out profitability. There's many other examples to give. Great lead sources, they seem to all go through a cycle. Typically, a new source is discovered and produces well for a time being, but then other competitors, they see or hear about the success in that conduit, and then they also utilize the same strategy. They copy from somebody else and begin to saturate that channel, particularly if it's producing results in short periods of time. Those great lead sources, even when they're very productive, can also be very costly, though, after you've paid for the leads that come in. And that cost comes in the form of work that you must do to diligently follow up with those leads. When you are following up with a lead that comes from lead sources where they don't have a connection to you, or they don't understand what your reputation is because they don't know what your brand is, means that you must work very hard to develop a level of trust with them in the beginning before you can have any discussions about transactions. And this trust building takes a tremendous amount of time and effort. Even with the current AI systems that can do some of this follow-up for you, you still must feed the machine, and that machine creates a cost. And following up with people that have zero connection with you takes a lot of time, and that time is a cost. The alternative would be is if you hired someone to do it, then that follow-up becomes a cost of dollars that you're actually spending. So if you're doing it yourself, you're spending time on that one lead, following up, and you're losing opportunity cost, or you're paying somebody and the money is going out, and that's a real cost you must pay. If you don't hire someone to do it and you're not doing it, then you're losing the cost that you paid for the leads and the opportunity. That's a double whammy. As an alternative, you could be investing your time and your energy into building a brand and developing a network of people that you have relationships with that will eventually produce business for you year after year, almost on its own, without the intensive cost of advertising to people who do not know you and where you have not built that reputation of excellence. Again, I'm going to go back to this idea of cultivating versus hunting and gathering. If you're a farmer and you nurture, and takes a while to nurture an orchard of peaches or a herd of cattle, for you to eat, you just have to go out and pick the fruit or harvest a calf, so to speak, and it's right there. If you're a hunter and gatherer, you have to go out, you have to find, you have to then harvest away from where all of your tools are. You then have to transport the stuff back. And all of this extra time, again, in hunting and gathering versus being a cultivator, is exactly what we're talking about here in a business sense. So this alternative is to build a reputation with the people that you're cultivating of making promises that provide real value. And that value translates to something that the clients want. And then keeping those promises and delivering them on time. Typically, when you have this kind of brand power, meaning they know you are going to do what you say you're going to do every time, and someone reaches out to you, they are already way down your sales cycle, thus maximizing your time and your employees' time. So, for example, you get a lead, they don't know who you are, you're trying to follow up just to get a conversation going, and then you got to build trust and all kinds of stuff. Whereas if somebody calls you from having this feeling that you're going to be a good person to do business with because you've been branding and cultivating, most of these calls are, hey, I want to buy a house. I'd like to talk to you about it. They've already made their decision to use you. Or I'm thinking about selling my house. They've already made the decision to hire you. And this proves out in the statistics that almost 80%, this is an NAR statistic, almost 80% of people who buy or sell property only talk to one person. They call one person. That's it. Their mind is pretty much already made up at that point. So when you accomplish this goal of building a reputation and building a brand, you basically dramatically decrease your client acquisition costs, which is known in the business world as a CAC, C-A-C. And when you can reduce this client acquisition cost, your gross profit, your margins get much higher because you're spending less time or money to follow up with these people on each client. You can do more business with the same amount of time. Your efficiency goes way up. This is why we argue that cold leads have a diminishing return on investment. And that if your primary business is generating leads, then you are always stuck generating leads. You never cultivate that herd or that orchard of peaches that you can just go pick a juicy peach from, which is a client saying, hey, I'm thinking about listing my home and let's talk about it. That is the metaphor that we're working for here, that it's easier to close and do business. Therefore, in summary, I believe your time is much better spent investing it into building your SOI and your network, at least initially, until you create a tremendous amount of free cash flow where you have good profit margins, and that you could then invest this free cash flow into other avenues or areas that you can build a brand, again, a brand, not lead generation, such as in geographical marketing, to scale your business much further. So what's better, lead hunting or branding? In the long term, and I'm talking about the long term, branding absolutely buries lead hunting and going after leads to close. Branding is the way to significant and sustainable business income. This has been another episode of Going Forward with James B. I hope this has been thought-provoking and worth your time. Have a great day.